So Prince William has basically staged a quiet coup inside Buckingham Palace, and his first major move is to systematically remove Queen Camilla from the royal machine after a secret luxury yacht scandal completely blew up. And the wildest part isn't even the yacht, it's the fact that this whole thing unraveled because of a routine ship registry update that almost nobody reads. Like we're talking about the kind of maritime filing that exists purely for insurance purposes, and it ended up triggering a chain reaction that's now reshaping the British monarchy in real time. That's where the story actually starts, and honestly, the deeper you go into the timeline, the more the official explanations just completely fall apart. Before we get into the details, if you're new here on Crown Watch, hit subscribe so you don't miss updates on this story as it develops. All right, let's break this down. The trip nobody was supposed to know about happened in late July 2025. While William and Kate were doing back-to-back public engagements across the UK, visiting a children's hospice in Birmingham, attending a veterans event near Edinburgh, Camilla was on a super yacht anchored off the southern coast of France. This wasn't a royal vessel, it wasn't chartered by the Crown with an official staff list and an entry in the court circular. It was a private super yacht registered in Malta called the Esperanza III, owned through a holding company in Luxembourg, and belonging to a Swiss-based financier whose name didn't appear anywhere in Camilla's official schedule, her public diary, or any press release issued by the palace during that entire summer. No announcement was made to the public, no royal correspondents received a briefing. Even the palace press office, which normally records nearly every major movement of senior working royals, had absolutely no record of this journey. That alone tells you a lot. This wasn't an oversight, this was deliberately kept off the books. The yacht's owner is not a convicted criminal, and authorities have never charged him with any crime. But over the past 10 years, his name has appeared in multiple European lobbying disclosures. His company maintains active business interests in land development, agricultural policy, and heritage property laws, fields that are uncomfortably close to the types of decisions that royal patronages and crown estate management can influence. He's exactly the kind of individual the royal family was supposed to avoid after the Prince Andrew scandals. And here's where it gets worse. Camilla had stayed on his boat before. That detail came out later, and we'll get to it, but for now, let's focus on this specific trip in late July, which lasted 5 days. The guest list featured a Conservative Party donor with active property planning applications in the West Country. It also included a European media executive whose company holds broadcasting contracts with businesses that receive royal endorsements. And there were at least 2 individuals whose names appeared in leaked files from a 2023 lobbying investigation in Brussels. None of these people were there in any official capacity. None of them were on the public record. The story didn't break because of some big investigative scoop or an anonymous whistleblower. It came to light through a routine ship registry update, the kind of standard maritime filing that almost nobody reads unless you're an industry specialist. The document placed the vessel at a specific marina on a particular date. A royal researcher then cross-referenced this filing with a photograph published by one of the guests. It was a background shot of a dinner on deck, posted briefly on a private Instagram account before the user deleted it, but someone had already saved the image. Within 48 hours, 2 British journalists and a German media outlet received the photo. The German organization had spent years tracking European lobbying networks, so they knew exactly what they were looking at. By the first week of August, reporters were quietly verifying the basic facts. By the middle of August, the palace press office started getting phone calls it was completely unprepared to answer. This situation was uniquely damaging, not just because of the vacation itself, but because of when it took place. For the previous 18 months, William had been pushing a very specific plan inside the palace. He wanted tighter controls on the outside relationships that senior royals could maintain. Stricter rules regarding gifts and hospitality from people with financial interests connected to the crown, and a clear internal order stating that the monarchy could not risk another access-selling scandal like the ones that destroyed Prince Andrew. William had put these new expectations in writing. His team sent the updated rules to the households of all senior royals. This guidance was mandatory, not optional. Camilla's office received the document, She went on the trip anyway. Royal sources spoke to the Times in August and described the atmosphere inside Kensington Palace as one of controlled fury. And if you understand how William functions, that phrase is way more chilling than an open display of anger. William doesn't yell. He doesn't leak to the press. He doesn't grant interviews to explain his side of things. He removes people from his life. He removed his own brother from the royal institution. He removed Camilla's sister from the Duchy of Cornwall payroll without making a single public comment. He forced Prince Andrew out of Royal Lodge through a process so methodical and patient that by the time it concluded, Andrew had no options left. The people who know William best say the same thing about him every time. When he decides something is over, it's completely over. The formal announcement, if it ever comes, is just standard paperwork. So by late August, the question inside palace circles wasn't whether William would take action, it was how he'd respond and how quickly. But there's another detail we need to look at before we get to his reaction. Who told him? William didn't find out about this from the news media. He learned about it before journalists even started making their initial phone calls. Someone in a small group who knew about the trip, whether a guest, a staff member, or someone connected to the yacht's owner, made sure the details went straight to Kensington Palace. In the world of royalty, that's not just a leak, that's a warning. It means that whatever happened on that boat, at least one witness believed it was wrong enough to alert the future king directly. William had a source deep inside the circle, and that completely changes how we look at everything that followed, because it proves the scandal didn't catch him by surprise. Someone deliberately handed him the information to prompt him to act. And he did. Now let's talk about the paper trail, because this is where Camilla's story really falls apart. The yacht Esperanza III is registered in Malta, carries a Maltese maritime license, and is owned through a holding company based in Luxembourg. This setup, an island registration combined with a continental holding company, is pretty common for luxury vessels, but it also makes financial transparency extremely difficult. And that's a major issue here, because nobody has clearly answered who actually paid for Camilla's time on board. When royals accept private travel hospitality from outside individuals, they're supposed to declare it. There's a specific system for this. Senior royals who receive gifts, travel, or lodging from private individuals above a certain value must report it through internal palace channels. These reports go into annual transparency records that senior household officials review. Camilla's July trip doesn't appear in any of these records. The holding company that owns Esperanza III is registered in Luxembourg as Verlaine Capital Partners. It has 3 listed directors. One of them is a British citizen who was named in a 2022 Parliamentary Committee report on foreign influence in UK property markets. The report didn't say he committed a crime, but it did state that his firm's lobbying activities regarding heritage land decisions deserved closer scrutiny. Heritage land decisions are exactly the areas where royal support holds genuine influence. The King's Foundation, which Charles spent decades building and which Camilla is publicly linked to, weighs in on these kinds of choices. It's not definitive proof of wrongdoing, but it's significant. That answer landed very poorly inside Kensington Palace. The phrase, "Private travel is a personal matter," works fine for a holiday that a royal pays for themselves with no outside financial links. It does not work when the travel is hosted by someone whose company has a clear financial connection to royal charities. At that point, it becomes a conflict of interest that the palace's own rules were created to prevent. William's office challenged Camilla's response within days. A source described this pushback as direct, meaning it wasn't softened by diplomatic language or sent through assistants. The message stated that calling this a private matter was unacceptable and demanded a full account of the trip's financing be provided to the king's senior officials immediately. As of the time of this report, that information still hadn't been provided. And to make things more complicated, this wasn't the first time. 3 palace sources confirmed to 2 different publications that Camilla had previously accepted hospitality from the same yacht owner. It happened during a long weekend in the summer of 2023. That trip was also kept secret and left off the transparency records. One senior official noticed the earlier trip at the time. A quiet conversation took place. Nothing formal was recorded, and the matter was dropped. William didn't know about it then, but he knows about it now. This changes everything. What first looked like a single mistake is actually part of a pattern. The pattern was flagged once and ignored, and the same yacht owner hosted Camilla again in 2025 2 years later, after making financial contributions to royal structures in the meantime. The key document for William's team wasn't the port list. It was the charity accounts. They cross-referenced the £40,000 donation from Verlaine Capital Partners against the dates of both yacht trips. Then they checked it against the 2024 planning application submitted by a branch of that same holding company for a heritage site in Somerset. The application was rejected, but it was reviewed by a group that included advisors appointed by the royals. Nobody is saying Camilla stepped in to influence the outcome. But the appearance of a close relationship with the businessmen seeking decisions from bodies linked to her network is exactly what the palace promised to stop. By late August, William's team saw that this was no longer just a story about a yacht. It was a failure of palace governance, and that left everyone facing a question nobody inside the palace wanted to ask out loud. Did Charles know? The meeting that changed everything took place on a Tuesday during the first week of September 2025. It was held at Kensington Palace rather than Buckingham Palace, and that choice of location is highly significant. William choosing his own residence instead of the king's home sends a clear signal before the meeting even starts. 3 senior advisors attended: William's private secretary, his communications secretary, and one official from the king's household who had been ordered to attend rather than invited. Ordered is exactly the right word, and nobody in the room missed the importance of that distinction. William brought a physical folder filled with printed documents instead of using a digital screen. Inside were the charity financial statements, the port logs, the lobbying disclosures from 2022, and a single-page summary of the 2023 trip. The earlier journey that had been quietly noted and then hidden away by an official who should have passed the information up the chain of command. He placed the folder on the table and left it there. He didn't describe the contents or guide them through the pages. He simply said, "I need to know who saw this in 2023," and decided it didn't need to go further. The official from the king's household, a man with over 15 years of palace experience, couldn't provide a clear answer. He knew the earlier trip had been flagged, but he didn't know who had decided to keep it off the official record. That lack of clarity did not satisfy William, and he made his displeasure obvious. According to a source with direct knowledge of the meeting, what followed wasn't a shouting match. It was much quieter and more uncomfortable. William went through the paper trail step by step. The first trip, the financial donation, the property planning application. The second trip, he arranged them in chronological order and asked a simple question: at what point was my father informed? The answer was complicated. Charles had been told about the July trip, but only as a casual update, not as a formal disclosure. He knew about it the way a husband is told his wife is going on a holiday. The location, approximate dates, that she was traveling with friends. He hadn't been told who owned the yacht. He didn't know about the Luxembourg holding company, the lobbying history, or the donation. Whether he bothered to ask is a separate question, and it was one nobody in the room was willing to answer directly. William sat in silence for a moment before saying that the king didn't know because the system failed to protect the right things. Then he made 3 specific demands. First, a full written disclosure of both trips had to be given to the king's principal private secretary within 7 days. Second, a full review of Camilla's patronages was required to check for links to outside donors. Third, an immediate suspension of all contact between Camilla's household.
He didn't ask for the throne early. He didn't seize it in some dramatic palace coup. But over the last 2 years, without a single formal announcement, Prince William has quietly become the man actually running the British monarchy, and the paper trail proving it is sitting in public records, court circulars, and royal biographies that anyone can check for themselves. This isn't speculation dressed up as fact. It's a documented shift, built one crisis at a time, starting on a Monday morning in February 2024 when Buckingham Palace released a statement that changed everything. King Charles III, the palace confirmed, had been diagnosed with cancer, discovered incidentally during treatment for an enlarged prostate. The type of cancer was never publicly specified. What was specified was this: the king would step back from public-facing duties while undergoing regular treatment. For a 75-year-old monarch who had been on the throne for barely 18 months, it was a seismic moment. and it landed at almost the exact same time as a second, unrelated crisis inside the family. Just weeks earlier, Catherine, Princess of Wales, had undergone planned abdominal surgery. William stepped back from his own royal engagements to care for her and their 3 children, and in March 2024, the Princess of Wales revealed in a personal video message that she too had been diagnosed with cancer and was undergoing preventive chemotherapy. For a period of weeks, the 2 most senior working branches of the British royal family, the reigning monarch and the heir's own household, were simultaneously dealing with cancer diagnoses. It is difficult to overstate how unusual that convergence was for an institution built on the appearance of stability. William returned to public duties in February 2024, attending an investiture ceremony at Windsor Castle, before appearing that evening at a gala dinner for London's air ambulance charity. He thanked the public for their support of Catherine and his father in brief remarks that royal correspondents present described as visibly emotional. It was a small moment, but it marked the start of something larger. With the king stepping back and the Princess of Wales in treatment, the working royal family had effectively shrunk overnight, and the person left standing closest to the center of it was William. According to royal biographer Robert Jobson, whose book, The Windsor Legacy, was excerpted by the Daily Mail, William privately considered scaling back his own public duties in 2024, overwhelmed by the dual weight of his father's illness and his wife's diagnosis. Jobson writes that Charles, despite undergoing his own treatment, urged his son to reconsider, effectively asking William not to retreat at the exact moment the institution needed him most. Jobson also reports that both William and Catherine became noticeably more private in their faith during this period, with William attending church more regularly than in the past, though as quietly as possible. Whether or not every detail of that account can be independently verified, the broader pattern it describes is not in dispute. 2024 was the year William stopped being the heir who waited and became the heir who worked. The institutional mechanics backed this up. In May 2024, at the Army Aviation Center in Middle Wallop, Charles formally passed down the role of Colonel-in-Chief of the Army Air Corps to his son, one of a series of military and ceremonial titles transferred from father to son as the king's own capacity for public engagements narrowed. William didn't make his first visit to troops in that specific role until June 2025, when he traveled to Wattisham to meet the 4th Regiment Army Air Corps, later posting online that he was proud to take up the role and impressed by what he called the relentless commitment of the soldiers he met. Small ceremonial handovers like this rarely make front-page news, but taken together across dozens of patronages and military affiliations, they represent something real, a gradual, methodical transfer of institutional weight from a monarch managing serious illness to an heir being positioned, quietly and deliberately, to carry more of it. There is also a less visible layer to this, buried in constitutional mechanics most people never think about. Under the law governing councillors of state, the small group of senior royals legally empowered to act on the monarch's behalf when he is unavailable or unwell, the king requested an expansion of that group. Traditionally, only the sovereign spouse and the next 4 adults in the line of succession can serve, which meant that for a period the working list technically included Queen Camilla, William, Prince Harry, and the then Duke of York, alongside Princess Beatrice, despite the fact that neither Harry nor Andrew were performing royal duties. The absurdity of that situation, 2 men who had stepped back from public life, still holding the legal authority to represent the crown, is part of why the change was requested in the first place, expanding the eligible pool to include Princess and the Duke of Edinburgh, working royals who could realistically be called upon. It's a dry legal detail, but it tells you something important. Even the machinery designed for succession and continuity had to be quietly rebuilt to reflect a monarchy that had grown smaller and more fragile than the rules had ever anticipated. Then, in the autumn of 2025, the family's most damaging open wound was finally excised, and this part of the story is fully documented, reported by outlets including Reuters, CNN, and the BBC, and confirmed in official notices published in the London Gazette. Prince Andrew, Duke of York, had spent years as the family's single greatest liability, his reputation shredded by his association with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, and by a 2022 civil settlement with Virginia Giuffre, who had accused him of sexual abuse when she was a minor. Andrew always denied the allegations, but in April 2025, Giuffre died by suicide, and the posthumous publication of her memoir reignited public scrutiny of Andrew at a moment the palace could not afford. On October 17, 2025, Andrew announced in a personal statement that he would no longer use the title Duke of York, saying the continued accusations against him were distracting from his brother's work and the wider work of the royal family. Less than 2 weeks later, on October 30th, Buckingham Palace went further, confirming that the king had initiated a formal process to strip Andrew of his remaining styles, titles, and honors. By early November, according to notices in the London Gazette, Andrew had been removed from the role of the peerage entirely and stripped of the style, His Royal Highness, and the titular dignity of Prince. He would now be known simply as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, a private citizen in the eyes of the Crown, required to vacate the royal lodge in Windsor that had been his home for 2 decades. Royal historians noted that it was the first time in more than a century that a member of the British royal family had been stripped of a title in this manner. Andrew's fall wasn't William's doing alone. It was, by every credible account, a decision made and executed by King Charles himself, exercising the royal prerogative that only a reigning monarch holds. But the direction of travel it represents, a monarchy actively contracting, shedding the members who present risk, tightening around a small, disciplined core, is the same direction William has been pushing for years in his own public remarks and in how he runs his own household. He has spoken openly in past interviews about wanting a more relevant, more focused monarchy, one closer in spirit to the compact, working models seen in some Scandinavian royal houses than to the sprawling extended family of cousins and minor royals that characterized his grandmother's reign. Andrew's removal, whatever its precise internal politics, fits that vision perfectly. So, does the quiet retreat of Prince Harry, who stepped back from royal duties in early 2020 and has remained a working member of no institution since. The public face of the monarchy by the end of 2025 had narrowed to essentially 4 figures carrying the bulk of the workload: William, Catherine, Charles, and Princess Anne, with Charles's own appearances limited by his ongoing treatment. Catherine's own trajectory matters just as much to this story as anything happening to Andrew. She returned to public duties gradually through 2024, marking her comeback with an appearance at Trooping the Colour, and by 2025 had resumed a full and demanding schedule of engagements, patronages, and overseas travel. Royal correspondents, including Roya Nika of the Sunday Times, have tracked this return closely, noting the deliberate pacing the Wales household adopted, prioritizing Catherine's health while gradually restoring her public presence. What's notable is not just that she came back, but how central she became once she did, with the king's public appearances curtailed by treatment and recovery, and with so much of the extended family either stepped back or formally removed. Catherine's presence at major state occasions took on outsized significance. She has increasingly been positioned not as a supporting figure standing beside her husband, but as a genuine partner in the working monarchy the two of them are building together, a dynamic royal watchers have described as a shift toward a more visibly collaborative Wales household than the monarchy has seen in a generation. None of this happened through press conferences or formal decrees, and that's precisely the point. Valentine Lowe, The veteran royal correspondent and author of the acclaimed book Courtiers has spent his career documenting exactly this kind of change, how power inside Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace rarely moves through dramatic announcements. It moves through diaries, through who gets consulted before a decision and who finds out afterward, through which household absorbs a patronage when someone steps back, and which titles get quietly reassigned at ceremonies most people never hear about. Lowe's reporting, built on years of sourcing inside the royal households, describes an institution that guards its authority through information control as much as through ceremony, and that pattern is visible everywhere in William's rise. The Colonel-in-Chief handover, the expanded councillors of state, the steady reallocation of engagements as Charles's health has required. None of it was announced as a transfer of power. All of it functioned as one. And underpinning William's authority in very literal financial terms is the Duchy of Cornwall, the roughly 700-year-old estate established by Edward III in 1337 to fund the heir to the throne independently of the crown itself. William inherited stewardship of it the moment his father became king in September 2022, taking control of more than 130,000 acres spread across 23 counties in England, an estate valued at over £1 billion. According to the Duchy's own integrated annual report, the estate generated a distributable surplus of £23.6 million in the 2023 to 2024 financial year, and £22.9 million, roughly $30.9 million, in the year that followed, income that funds the entire public, charitable, and private life of the Wales household. That is not pocket change, and it is not symbolic. It is the actual economic engine underneath William's role, giving him institutional independence that predates and exists separately from anything happening to his father's health. He has run that estate for close to 4 years now, restructuring management arrangements and pushing sustainability initiatives, including a net zero commitment, according to the Duchy's own reporting. Long before the events of 2024 and 2025 forced him into a more visible leadership role, William had already been quietly proving, on a smaller and less scrutinized stage, that he could run a large, complex institution